What's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be talking about a topic that I think a lot of people have been asking themselves, or maybe not, but I think it's something that I wanted to answer mostly for myself, and I figured since I'm trying to answer it for myself, I'll put a video out and we can talk about it together. And that question, of course, is AUT versus YBA, and why YBA is winning. Because on the offset face value, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. AUT regularly gets more updates, it's got good developer communication, bugs, while pretty frequent, get fixed in a relatively decent amount of time, and overall, you'd think that AUT would have more players. But I think when we really start to look into the nitty-gritty of things, you can start to see why, and that's kind of the point of this video. Before we get things started proper though, there are of course some things that I need to address. The first one is, all of this is entirely my opinion, and could be totally wrong. Everything I say in here is subject to scrutiny, criticism, and when it comes down to it, I'm not right about everything, nor do I know all the answers. So most of this, if not all of this, is speculation. But one thing that is for sure is that AUT is losing. That isn't up for debate. The player counts speak for themselves. And it's not like it was always like this. When AUT launched, it had over 100,000 players and totally eclipsed out YBA's player count. Evidently, that has not held up. So we're here to talk about why that is. And the other thing that I have to mention here is that I don't necessarily think that AUT should change itself in order to become better than YBA or become YBA, because I don't think that's the answer. In fact, I think the answer is very different from that. Although the answer for me isn't going to be the answer for a lot of other people, and putting all your eggs into one basket is never a good idea. But I'm getting a bit off topic here, so I think it's better to just get this show on the road and kick things off with the first topic of conversation, which is the combat. I think the combat in YBA is a heavy reason why there are so many people that are still sticking around playing it. And I've been on record plenty of times before saying and making it very clear that I think that YBA's combat was just a happy accident. And I definitely stand by that. I think that the developers over at YBA, Uzu, when he was putting it together, just kind of threw stuff at the wall and it stuck. And they were like, all right, this is working, we'll just have it go this way. And then that's the way it worked out. Based on the balance decisions that they've made and the lack of attention to balance and all that kind of stuff, I can't in good faith give them credit for the wonderful combat system that they made. I just can't do it. Now, in regards to AUT, the problem with AUT's combat, and I think the reason that it kind of falls short, is the fact that we've seen AUT's combat time and time and time again everywhere else. Just think about how many games you've played where M1s have stun, you use M1s to start a combo, you do your combo, and then that's a wrap. And so it's just two players kind of playing this weird game of footsies, and whoever lands the first hit does about half your health, and if you land 2 hits, you do all of their health, and that's game over. We've seen it in the Jojo game, we've seen it in ABA, we've seen it in Troublesome Battlegrounds. It's everywhere. It's like that everywhere. And so YBA is being so different in that your M1s don't have stun, and there aren't a bunch of easy to land combo extenders that won't get you punished, that will give you big cutscene combos, is one of the big reasons that I think that a lot of people play that game over some of the others. The fact of the matter is, people don't like sitting there getting comboed and watching half of their health chip away. I don't think anyone would like to watch that happen. And it does feel good to pull off some of these combos, but sitting there and watching 200 health delete because some guy practiced for an hour and got the combo down really just isn't that much fun for a lot of people. Not only that, but because of lag and latency, there are some crazy hitbox issues that probably can't be resolved because of roadblocks that cause people to get hit by moves from miles away and this kind of stuff. And when that happens in YBA, it's not that huge of a deal because odds are what hit you wasn't some sort of move that could combo extend and put you in a 200 damage combo. But when someone uses a move that's nowhere close to you and it clips you and stuns you for 4 seconds and then the person can walk over and take 200 of your health, that's just not fun. Now, as I already said at the start of this video, I don't think that things need to change here, nor do I think they will change here. Completely changing AUT's combat system to just copy and paste YBA is not the right answer. And I'm sure it would also heavily disappoint all those that like the system here and don't want it to change. But what I believe to be the cold hard truth is that the combat is one of the reasons that AUT is just not as unique and keeps people going back to YBA and not this game. Next up on the docket is customization and progression. This is a big one, and probably the biggest one. And that's that in YBA, there is a ton of options when it comes to customization and progression. And it feels like the more you play and the more you do things, the more you meaningfully get more abilities and things that you can use. When you start off and you're a level 1 and you use an arrow and you get some crappy stand like Beach Boy, or even if you get a good stand like King Crimson, you don't have much to work with. You've usually got M1s, maybe a barrage, and that's it. But the more you play, you do quests, you level up, the more moves you unlock. And once you've got enough of those moves, then you can start meaningfully putting up a fight against other players. Not only that, but the skill tree system in YBA is nothing short of genius. The ability to have to make difficult decisions a lot of the time when it comes to trying to choose what you want to get and what you can do without or try to do without is a really interesting concept. And when you apply the specs on top of that make it so there's even more depth in your customization, and it just gives you a lot of options to experiment with and try out. AUT, on the other hand, doesn't really have any of this. The most progression that you have in AUT is doing quests to get some of the other stands in the game. But because some stands that come from arrows are arguably more powerful than those stands that you get from quests, a lot of the time there's not really a meaningful reason to go for that kind of stuff. A lot of us do it anyway just for the sake of collecting them all, but from a logical gameplay perspective, trying to go way out of your way to do a huge quest line in order to unlock something that's not as good as something else that you have just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, once again on the topic of this shouldn't change, this is something that definitely shouldn't change, because having something be more powerful based on rarity is a terrible idea and just overall leads to horrible game balance where everyone's using the thing that's quote-unquote hard to get. But on that same front, the total lack of any sort of real progression in AUT makes it so that there's not a whole lot of options once you've got what you want. And there's not room to experiment either. If your favorite stand in Jojo is Star Platinum the World and you do the quest to get Star Platinum the World, after you've gotten it, that's basically it. If you don't want anything else, then your time with the game is just about finished. There's no reason to log back in, and that's a wrap. I don't think there's much I really have to say here. I think it just kind of speaks for itself. Moving on, and the next one is social interaction. Now, I didn't really know how to put this on the list or phrase this on the list, and not only that, but I also think that a lot of the reasons that you need to have social interaction are kind of bad, and that applies to a lot of the things on this list. I think a lot of the things I'll be covering at the end are bad, but they still bring in the players. That's kind of what we're here to talk about. But regardless of the reasons of why social interaction is encouraged here, the fact is social interaction is encouraged here. Stuff like gangs and bringing friends to play together in YBA makes a lot of sense, especially for Steel Ball Run. Steel Ball Run being such an integral game mode, requiring you to use it to get certain corpse parts, having large cash rewards at the end, and overall, having a battle royale in today's gaming market, unfortunately, is a really powerful tool. And it does kind of overwrite another point that I was going to make, which I'll just kind of shoehorn in here, which is the game modes. YBA's game modes of 1v1s, 2v2s, and SBR is arguably much better than AUT's 1v1s, URF, and draft mode, especially when you consider the battle royale of Steel Ball Run that brings people together and people have to do in order to get certain things unlocked. When you force people to go through that RNG nonsense, they continually play because they want to get what's at the end of it. It's really anti-consumer, sure, and it super sucks when you're playing by yourself and losing Steel Ball Run over and over again, but it does encourage you to get together with others, and games are more fun with friends, hence the social interaction part. I think it's safe to say that you're more likely to log onto a game with someone on your friends list that you know playing it than log on by yourself, especially when you know that logging on with a friend there is going to give you a hefty advantage over not having that. Now, YBA's tried their best to try to ruin this aspect of their game by making it so that you can barely do anything in teams, but the point still stands that playing with more people gives you an advantage and it causes more people to play. Next up on the docket, and a really negative one, and that's the grind. YBA's grind for certain things is horrible, and AUT's grind for a lot of those things is infinitely better. But unfortunately, this is a double-edged sword. Let's look at the skins, for example. YBA's skins are horribly implemented. Absolutely awful, because Uzu wanted them to be super rare so people would buy the game passes to re-roll their stands over and over again so that they could get a skin. That's why it is, and everyone knows that's why it is. Getting skins is supposed to be nigh impossible, so you'll pay for them. It's just the fact of the matter. Now, AUT's skin system is implemented infinitely better, makes it so you can reliably get skins that you want based entirely on playing the game. Not doing any sort of stupid grindy crap, just log in, do a simple daily quest every day, and after 6 or 7 days, you could get most, if not any, of the skins of your choosing. But as I said, double-edged sword. When you have a skin system that's so incredibly difficult to get a skin, and people really want to get those skins, they're gonna play over and over and over because, well, they're dumb, let's face it, in order to spend all this time to get a skin. Whereas in AUT, if it's as simple as logging in 6 days in a row, you log in, you do a quest, you quit, you log in, you do a quest, you quit, and then you get the skin, that's the end of it. Why bother logging in anymore? You already got what you wanted. But it doesn't just extend to skins, I think it also extends to stands. In my opinion, you can get some of the best stands in the game in AUT within maybe 15 minutes of playing it, and that's not an exaggeration. Just about everything that you can get with an arrow, if not arguably every single stand that you can get off of an arrow, is worth using. So AUT, you can log in for 5 minutes, run to the beach, grab an arrow, use it, get Star Platinum, and you're good to go. No need to level up, no need to roll arrows and rokas over and over again, none of that. You just grab an arrow, use it, you've got a stand, you're good. Now if you wanted Star Platinum in YBA, oh my lord, you could be there for days. And that's not an exaggeration. Star Platinum stand grinding is horrendously awful and absolutely miserable to try to get what you want. Basically, everything that people actually want has an absurdly low chance of actually being obtained. And so most of the time, you're gonna use an arrow and you're gonna get Beach Boy, you're gonna get Aerosmith, you're gonna get Sticky Fingers, and you're gonna get all these different things that nobody wants. And the odds of you getting something actually worthwhile, the World, King Crimson, Star Platinum, etc., is extremely low. So you may have to use 20, 30, 40, 100 arrows to actually get something worthwhile, and even when getting something worthwhile, the odds are still that you don't get what you want. So if you're trying to get the world, and you get Star Platinum, then, well, you don't have the world. So you need to get rid of Star Platinum, use more Rokas, more arrows, try to get the world, and hey, you got Star Platinum again. Thanks, duplicates. The point being, it takes forever for you to get stands. And on top of the fact that it takes forever for you to get stands, the fact that you only have 2 stand storage slots once you hit Prestige 2 means that you can have 2 things in your storage, but then when you want to try something different, you have 3 options. You either replay the entire game on an alt account to gain more storage, sell your soul to the devil and give Uzu money for more stand storage slots that are way overpriced, or you Roka one of the stands that you already have that you want in order to get another one. All of these, excluding the paying Uzu money thing, all make you play the game longer. Whether you're replaying the whole game over and over again to get more slots, or you're getting rid of something that you may want to try to get later, the point is, the things keep you playing the game. It sucks and it's not fun, but it's something that keeps people around, and that's just a shame. But oh well, some things will never change. And this is probably one of them. And the final thing on here that I have is just the type of game that YBA is versus AUT. AUT, at its core, is a competitive fighting game. YBA is not. People would like to think that YBA is, and maybe some of the game mechanics lend itself to this, but at the end of the day, YBA is just not a competitive fighting game. Yes, it has a quote-unquote ranked 1v1s mode, but the 1v1s mode has random matchmaking. Thank God for that, though, let's be real here. 2v2s is a bit of a dumpster fire at all times, but that's kind of the fun in it. And SBR is a complete clusterfuck of gangs and shit. And I don't even really think I have to talk about main game. That place is usually just people running around farming and people being toxic and spamming easy. But at the end of the day, that whole environment fosters people to come back more than a competitive fighting game does. Competitive fighting games, at the end of the day, are niche. Not a whole lot of people want to play those games because there's learning curves and things you need to figure out in order to do well. And it's easier to just mash buttons and have more people than the other team than to actually figure out how to play. Not only that, but it's also a lot easier to just spend a few hours grinding up yourself so that you're better than some other people objectively with your stats, and then crush them while you have double their health and double their damage. People like these kinds of things. It's just the way it is. And so really what it comes down to when you think about the type of game when it comes to AUT versus YBA, I don't even know if I could put it into a genre. It's kind of a competitive fighting game. It's kind of an RPG. It does things from all over the map. AUT, on the other hand, is just competitive fighting game. That's what it is. The PvE elements of AUT are extremely half-baked and barely functional, if we're being honest, with NPCs teleporting around and all this nonsense, along with not taking correct stuns and that kind of stuff. Whereas YBA's AI, while not phenomenal, at least applies the rules of the game to itself. And also usually doesn't fly around like crackheads. Or at least it didn't used to anyway. But I think what I'm trying to say here is just that the type of game that YBA is lends itself more so to having people come back than AUT does. And that probably won't ever change. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is more up to your interpretation than mine. Now, if you were going to ask me that kind of question, then I'll answer it here in this kind of pseudo-conclusion. I do think that it's a serious shame that no game has overthrown YBA yet. And that's not because I don't like YBA. I truly do, and if I didn't, then I wouldn't put so many hours into it. But the fact is, the passion for YBA from its developers just isn't there anymore, and it's been made painfully clear. The lack of real competition for YBA has caused the developers to notice that they don't really have to try. And because of that, updates take forever to come out, bugs don't get fixed, balance issues don't get fixed. And overall, with all of those things being considered, I think you can safely say that the only reason that YBA even continues to get updates is to become a cash cow that makes tons of money. If this somehow offends you for some reason, which I don't really know why it would, then I'm sorry, but just look at the facts around you. Now, I can't say that I totally blame the people behind it, especially Uzu, that things have turned out this way. While on a moral level, I disagree with a lot of the grind decisions being made here, and personally, if I was in that situation, I don't think I would do the same thing, but obviously I can't say for sure since I'm not in those situations. What I will say is I absolutely understand the sentiment of losing passion for something. And the biggest passion that I've lost is playing YBA. So ironically, it's in the same kind of camp. You'll notice that a whole lot of the recent videos have been AUT specific, and that's because I've played a ton of YBA. And after playing that much YBA, at this point, just about the only YBA that I actually play is for video purposes. Outside of that, I just don't play. And that used to not be the case at all. I used to play the game constantly, on the regular. But nowadays, that's just not true anymore. I've lost the passion. It's not there anymore. Same for Uzu's development. And once that starts happening, you slow down with what you're doing, just like I have, and what you do put out is more so low effort than anything. So trust me, I understand, I get it. But even if I do get it, it's still a real shame that we're in the situation that we're in now. Some of the things that I've always really wished that Uzu would do is just hire out more developers to do his job for him, so that way the game can continue to go somewhere when he's not around or when he doesn't want to do it. but that takes away from profit margins and gets into that whole controversy of him not being able to hire developers because of a variety of reasons, and I'm sure it's just not that simple. So while I hope that that could be the case, it's a little bit unlikely. And in regards to passion, I think that the AUT developers very obviously have a lot more passion for their craft than YBA does, and they make it clear on the regular. Even stuff as simple as standard animations are obviously far more impressive in AUT than YBA. Simple attention to detail stuff is just more impressive here. There's different poses for all the different time stops in the game. All the animations look incredible and are in-depth and well-made. The beatdowns aren't just punch, 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 punch and don't take forever. Some stuff like the World High Voltage has different time stop lines and startups based on your health. Certain moves are only available when you're at certain percentages of health. The list goes on and on. There's so many really cool things about AUT that are only possible because of how much the developers cared when making their project. Not only that, but it's also pretty clear that a lot of the developers over at AUT got bored of making standard Jojo stands and started to branch out. A lot of people say that AUT isn't really a Jojo game because it has other universes' abilities in there. And I agree with you to an extent, but I think the main focus is still on stands. There are stands everywhere, and most abilities that are in the game are stands. But the ability to not force yourself to only have stands in the game is one of the reasons that I think that the AUT developers can still have the passion that they have. They don't feel restricted by the Jojo canon and any of that stuff. They felt like adding 2 specs from League of Legends, a game totally unrelated to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and just said, we're putting it in anyway. The ability to break that mold and just put in whatever they want is, I think, the reason that the passion can still be there for the developers for AUT, and why the passion has been basically outright totally lost for Uzu. People always knock Uzu for working on a bunch of mod specs behind the scenes, but odds are, in my opinion, that a lot of those specs are things that he wants to work on and would like to put in the game, but because of the clamoring of JoJo fans to never put anything in the game that isn't JoJo related, then he can't, and the only way that he can implement these things is as mod specs. If Uzu put in a Dragon Ball spec tomorrow, people would be pissed and there would be outrage. It's not a real JoJo game anymore. And because of that, he would never do that. But having Ultra Instinct Goku as a mod spec is something that people wouldn't really bat an eye at, because that kind of thing is just expected. But you know what? Whatever. The last thing that we're going to be talking about here, I promise it's the last thing, I know this has gone on forever, is what do I think can be done to dethrone YBA, or do I even think YBA can be dethroned? And the answer is yes. Yes, I really do think it can, but the undertaking would be very difficult. People like YBA because it's traditionally what they've been playing, and people are resistant to change. That much is just true across human beings. But maybe the answer isn't change. Maybe the answer is what they already have, but better. I think the real answer to dethroning YBA, if it was ever attempted, would be to just make a game highly similar, effectively ripping off YBA, but doing a better job. Think about if a game with YBA's game mechanics came out tomorrow, but had the in-depth movesets and animation fidelity of AUT. That would be incredible, and I think a ton of people would play it. Now, I know some of you are probably going to tell me that this was attempted before. Project Star tried to do this, and that game failed miserably. And yes, Project Star effectively died. But I think a lot of the main reasons that that happened was because Project Star just wasn't as good of a game, let's be honest here. And I can't fault the developers for that because it's like 2 people. Project Star was a passion project made by an incredibly small team that got way overhyped and blown way out of proportion with expectations that the small team would never be able to meet. Eventually they got overwhelmed and put the project on hiatus. And I totally understand why they did that. But I don't think using Project Star as a negative example of this is why it can't be done is the way to go. Because as I said, they had a small team, they didn't really know what kind of can of worms they were opening, and the game at its core just wasn't good enough. I think the main issue is that people are so afraid to rip off of YBA that we never get anything close to it, and there's never real competition against the genre that YBA is. And as much scrutiny as you may get if you just shamelessly ripped off YBA, if someone were to make the game but better, they would be able to show the world that their game is a better version of that game, and it would overwrite the criticisms of it being quote-unquote stolen. Because that whole idea of it being stolen is simply fabricated to stop competition. It's something that's completely absurd to me, and it's why it always confuses me when people ask in my Discord DMs if it's okay for them to make reviews of stuff on Roblox games, as if I hold some sort of monopoly on Roblox reviews. Obviously I don't. If you want to go do that, power to you. Do it. And if you think you can do a better job, then absolutely do that and show me up. That kind of competition promotes improvement in stuff, and lack of competition leads to things stagnating like they have now. Of course, there are going to be Roblox children that attack you and go, "You copied YBA!" But those kinds of people would be the people who were also logging on consistently to play the better game. And for the record, just to make things perfectly clear, before anything gets out of hand, I'm not actually advocating for people to steal YBA's assets, because I'm really tired of people hyping up these YBA clones that literally directly stole the game and then re-uploaded it. That's not what I'm talking about. If you play those games, you're an idiot, and if you are one of the people that makes those games, you're a scumbag. End of story. Now I know this video is supposed to be AUT versus YBA, right? And so I guess on that front, I don't think AUT ever can beat YBA again, but that's just a matter of my own opinion. No matter what they do, I think because of the type of the game it is, and just the legacy that YBA's built up and its perfect storm of all the stuff that I've talked about today, means that AUT just can't win this fight. It doesn't mean I won't support them in their attempts to do so, but I just don't think it can be done. On that same sense, there was a poll on the AUT Discord, which I'm sure I'd have to go dig up at this point, so I'm not gonna bother, but you'll have to take my word for it, where they decided to poll the community, at least in the Discord, about what they wanted to see next and what should be focused on. And if I recall, the things on there were something like a story mode, new PvE stuff, events, and more multiplayer stuff to do. And the thing that won by a pretty hefty landslide was a story mode. But I'm gonna be honest here, I don't think the AUT community really knows what they want. Sure, that's controversial, sure you could tell me I'm wrong, but this is where we probably should use Project Star as an example. That game had a big focus on its story mode, and there's no one playing it anymore. It's clear that the story mode part is not what adds to the longevity of the game. So overall, putting a whole lot of effort into a story mode probably would bring people back for maybe 2 weeks, and then people would complete it, and then it would be over and done with. You're probably not going to have any reason or want to go and replay the thing again, especially with AUT's horrendous AI, which I would hope they improve if they did this. AUT does need some sort of tutorial for new players to tell them what to do, so maybe this is a good way of doing that, who knows. But really, this is all just my 2 cents. So you know what? Let me know what you think about all this stuff in the comments. And what I really want to know is, on my assumption, most of you probably play YBA more than AUT. So why is that? I really want to know the community sentiment about why there are more people playing YBA than AUT. Maybe I'll run some polls because I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to know the real reasons. So let me know. With that though, I'm just about done here. If you enjoyed this video, I know it's really long, thank you for getting this far. You can leave a like, subscribe. If you didn't, you could leave a dislike, but I wouldn't see it because YouTube removed the dislikes. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.